Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, Cabinet Member for Community Safety, Leisure and Sport. If continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street, past University Park building. In order to comply with Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who has signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. And can I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting is being live streamed? Please use the microphones and remember to switch them off when you have finished speaking, or the camera will stay on you. Members of the press and public are also permitted, and welcome Toby, to record the meeting on the understanding that neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly they do not wish to attend. I've introduced myself, so if we can go from Hannah here around the table and including Toby all the way to the end here, just who you are and why you're here.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Councillor Hannah Brent. I'm the Drayton and Farlington Councillor and on this panel. Thank you.
Councillor Emily Strudwick, Portsmouth Independent Party, Hilsey Ward.
Councillor Yenka Deniro, Charles Dickens Ward, Labour Councillor. Thank you.
Hi, Rob Fairman. I will be the interim Head of Community Safety at Portsmouth City Council.
Hello, Lauren Rackham, Head of Community Safety, Portsmouth City Council.
Good afternoon, Richard Lee, Assistant Director of Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Donna Cook, Countryside Officer for Baffins and Milton.
Peter Roberts, Countryside Officer, Portsmouth.
Rishi Jones, Countryside Officer, Portsdown Hill.
Hannah Thompson, Portsmouth City Council, Countryside Officer.
Claire Watkins, Business Manager, Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services Directorate.
And Kelly Nash from the Strategy Unit. Jane Dodino, Local Democracy Officer.
So when you talk, if you would like to just bring the microphones a little closer to you, if that's all right, make sure everybody can pick up what you say. Thank you. So we'll get the meeting underway. We're going to juggle the items around a bit because we have our countryside officers here, and you'll probably be aware, if you look through, that these are all noting reports. Didn't have to bring them, but the reason that I want these reports brought is that I want to make sure that opposition members have...
Sorry, Chair, may I interrupt? I have a problem with the live stream. It's not working, I'm told.
That's all right. They can hear us, can't they?
No, I mean, there's nothing on the live stream. I've just been told it's not working technically. I mean, you are in a public meeting, so you can go ahead without it.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, anyway, so it's all noting reports. Reason that I do it is I want you to have a really good understanding of what the portfolio of services does, and it keeps you up to date and up to speed. It's really interesting, some of the things that we are all doing. And I specifically asked for the countryside officers to come along so they have a better understanding of what it is that we do in a decision meeting or in the council. As I say, we're all learning from each other all of the time. As I say, I think it's really important that opposition members have a really good understanding of the breadth of the portfolio of services and what they do. And you'll hear, you'll see, I'm sure you've read it, you'll hear from officers today quite how it all fits together. So apologies for absence. There's no absentees I'm aware of, thank you. And I don't have any interest. Anybody got any interest to declare? Councillor Hogday.
Brent.
Sorry, Brent.
I'll let you carry on with that, I don't mind. It's no declaration, Chair, but I do need to leave. I'm sorry in advance, just after 3. So apologies in advance.
Yeah, fine. That's great. Might cut through it by then. No one else? All right, let's get on with it then, to give Councillor Brent the opportunity to get on. So we've juggled the meetings around. We're taking the first item, which is the countryside officers update. And who's introducing it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this annual report provides a comprehensive summary of the work programme and outcomes of the countryside team. And the report, you'll see, first sets out the broader strategic picture, how the work meets the objectives of the council and the city vision, including the council's own commitment to protect and enhance the environment. The work of the small team is cross-cutting, with collaborative working with other colleagues in the council, for example, those in public health. You'll see from the report the main objectives of the work programme include proactive biodiversity management across a range of sites to enable and maintain an abundance of native flora and fauna, the restoration of native species, working with partners to meet statutory requirements, such as the county for the local nature recovery strategy, and liaising with subcontractors to mitigate disturbance to the sites, and also encouraging the public to take an interest and enjoyment in the sites across the city. You'll see from the report that the engagement work undertaken by the team is particularly significant. The volunteer hours speak for themselves, equating to 6.7 full-time staff equivalent, providing physical and mental well-being benefits for the volunteers, such as those who come to us from Portsmouth Interaction. Working with local groups and interested parties allows a co-production approach, developing a sense of pride, place and community ownership for local people. The team have also undertaken extensive work with schools, both primary and senior, for work experience together with placement students. And lastly, the team's work is also promoted on their own social media site, Nature of Portsmouth, to help reach a broad audience via digital channels. And now each of the officers is just going to bring a highlight from their work.
In my role,
as you go again, could you just introduce your names
Yeah, sure.
and which area you cover? Because it's on page 3, and they can put your name down by it.
Sure, so I'm Hannah Thompson and I work on a city-wide basis. I advise on biodiversity enhancements for parks and green spaces. With a team of volunteers, we implement habitat improvements highlighted in these biodiversity recommendations. Examples include native hedgerow and wildflower planting. I also promote nature education and engage with all ages and abilities through free events and activities as part of the Council's commitment to greening. One project I'm currently working on is called Buzz About the Place, identifying specific areas within parks and green spaces that can be left to naturalise with minimum management, creating small pockets of wildflower grassland. This includes leaving no-mow areas, sowing larger areas of native wildflower seed, creating the ideal habitat for a range of invertebrates such as insects to breed and forage in. Lastly, these areas of natural habitat also help create wildlife corridors from one green space to another, allowing wildlife to move more freely and safely across the city.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah, Richard Jones, Portsdown Hill. My area, Portsdown Hill, is significant in that a large part of it is a site of special scientific interest. So there's a requirement to maintain that in a favourable condition, which we've been doing for the last 30 or so years. So it's now receiving a lot of attention to get its biodiversity back in place. Adjacent to it and integrated with it is non-SSSI areas which are of interest, and we manage that in a sympathetic way to augment and extend the area of calcareous grassland and other habitats. We've got a lot of volunteer assistance, work with a lot of community groups, and probably the most significant thing at the moment is preparation for grazing. The site requires grazing, so we're getting the place ready for put some grazing cattle on. And not an insignificant draw of my time is the presence of lots of utility firms. It's a lot of Southern Electric infrastructures on the site, so that they're often requiring attendance. So I have to interact with them to ensure that no damage occurs, and we mitigate that. Provide a series of guided walks as a strong volunteer group, and as a Friends of group, which with myself provide an accessible means of enjoying the hill and taking in the quite astonishing high level of biodiversity on the site. It's a very wildlife-rich site, uncommon to have such an interesting and significant place so close to so many people. So it's a great add and of great interest and value to the city, I think.
Yeah, and I always ask you to talk about the vetch and the blue. What is the species of butterfly again?
You've got the chalk-hill blue butterfly, which feeds on the horseshoe vetch, and it's aided and abetted by a yellow meadow ant. Other fascinating plant-insect interactions are available, thousands of them. I wish I had the time to study them, but it is a thing about biodiversity in the study of it. There's more there than you can know about, but it is helpful to have an idea of the key charismatic and characteristic species. If you know how they're doing, you can get a certain level of confidence that the rest of it is doing okay as well.
That's excellent, Richard. Who's next?
Name's Pete Roberts, Portsmouth Countryside Officer. My sites are spread around the city and off the island, ranging from Eastney Beach up to Farlington. But most people know me from Hilsey Lines. I'm based at Hilsey Lines, so that's there. Main things that are going on at the moment is obviously sea defences. You will be aware that there is sea defences around the north of the island as well. But they are a lot more nature sensitive than the seafront. So it's essentially a earthen embankment with rock revetments, with lots of planting, regeneration afterwards. So that's my main project at the moment. Thank you.
And I'm sure you'll learn things about the stag beetles rather, up at Hilsey Lines. I always like to talk about those too.
Yeah, we've got a major population of stag beetles. For those that don't know them, they're one of the largest beetles in the country, and they obviously have horns. We provide a lot of shelter from those in the forms of habitat. Often we do that with education, or schools and education and community groups. Thank you.
So one of your beetles flew down to my garden last summer, and I found her in the garden, so I created my own small stag beetle mound and took great delight in watching her bury herself in the soil with stumps of wood that I put down there. So far as I know, she's still there. All right. The last one.
Donna Cook, I'm the Countryside Officer for Baffins and Milton. Primarily engaged at the moment with grassland improvement and expansion at Milton Common. A lot of it's with the formation of a volunteer group who have been doing quite a lot of work alongside me for the bramble reduction and expanding the grassland that way. We've also expanded the grassland this year alongside the Eastern Road just by simply amending the grounds maintenance mowing regimes, which expanded and created a large area of wet meadow, interconnecting with the rest of it and expanding the habitat.
Wonderful, Donna. And you'll tell us about a few orchids that have been growing in that neck of the woods, I think, and the diversity of flora that's grown as a result of the maintenance, the attention that you and the volunteers have been giving it.
Yeah, we've got pyramidal orchids and bee orchids on site at Milton Common, and areas of bramble that have been pushed back have allowed even more of them to emerge in various areas. We had some bee orchids growing at Baffins Pond as well this year, just by reducing the mowing amendments along the beds along Tangiers Road. And obviously there was always a strong population of bee orchids along the Eastern Road, so we should hopefully see in the next few years, with the expansion of the meadow area along there, we might see a few more emerging.
Incredible work. You know, we're in a city. It's great to hear, isn't it? You know, you think we're all bricks and mortar and stuff, but there's so much else going on, and we've got an inner city, a medium-sized city. Yet we've got 4 countryside officers doing really good work. Members, is there anything you'd like to? Some questions you'd like? They would love to get some questions from you. I'm sure of it.
If you don't mind me jumping in. It's not really a question. I think it's just always really nice to hear, and I think I always feel really proud to be from Portsmouth because of our green spaces, our open spaces. I went on a walk at Portsdown Hill with you last year or the year before, I think it was, and we went then down to Milton, and just to see and learn about the SSR. To understand that further was really, really useful, and I would urge members to do that. From living in Cosham for many, many years, Hilsey Lines and Foxes Forest was always the place that I grew up and played and enjoyed, and it's just, you know, it's really, you feel proud to be there in such a well-looked after area. One tiny little thing, obviously coming down the M27, is just the works now with the sea defences. There is an impact. You can see a lot of trees have come down from Hilsey, which I know will have an impact, and it will just be nice to see once it's all completed how that is, you know, sort of revamped. And many, many years ago, I don't know if you know, but over at Foxes Forest there were meadows for horses grazing when I was younger. Yeah.
I know there are walnut trees growing there, but that's got a historic thing to it as well. There's the gun stocks for the British Army. They planted walnut trees, so got walnut trees up at Hilsey Lines. Emily, would you like to? She said it perfectly. All right. Go ahead.
Sorry, my question just goes to Baffins Pond, because I'm a bit conversant to that area. And then you made mention something about the pond itself is a delicate ecosystem. So I just want to know, can you shed more light on the work that you are doing or any option that you're looking into to manage the pond for a higher water quality? Is there any practical steps and what are you doing?
Okay, so the pond itself is a fishery, but there are wetlands around it which do actively help filter the water biologically. So with the reed beds that were established back in 2007 and 2012, those help maintain the water, clear out any toxins and nitrates that come out of it, as well as supporting a lot of wildlife. Ultimately, there is a lot of carp in the fishery, so there is a limit to what that will do, but it has helped balance and sustain the pond. The volunteers go in, they're in there at the moment, coppicing willow, which will be taking nutrients out that's been stored in the wood, and doing some cutbacks as well to help increase diversity in the reed beds themselves.
Yeah, sadly show you how old I am. I was there, I made the decisions on Baffin's Pond with the reed beds all those years ago, probably before your time, or not? Yeah, so anyway, and the idea was that the reed beds would help keep put air back into the water. I remember seeing everybody gathering around and planting up. So it only remains now for me to thank you all very much indeed for your hard work in all weathers, and with all of the volunteers, which we heard amount to 6.7 full-time equivalent posts. And now that is very significant. That's without those volunteers, you wouldn't be able to do your work, and our city would have been not so well off. So on behalf of all of us here and the City Council, thank you, and I'd be very grateful if somehow the thanks of the Council can be passed on to the volunteers to thank them for all of their work. And that could be noted in the minutes, please, Jane. Okay. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you for your attendance today.
Sorry, I was going to say I'm going to stay to listen to the other officers. Sorry.
And Mr. Lee then, so agenda item number 3.
Good afternoon again, members, chair. First of all, just a little introduction to regulatory services, and there's 4 elements of this information report which I have pulled together in alphabetical order, so they're not in relevance of importance. But as you're aware, regulatory services covers a vast range of functions, and perhaps I'll have the opportunity to talk about some of our other activities next time we meet. But I'll bow to you on that, Chair.
Well, I wouldn't mind hearing about the Crown Court and how that's going before you leave.
I could certainly do that, but I won't do it as part of this this narrative this afternoon. First of all, animal welfare. We have a responsibility in regulatory services, and we've had this responsibility for a long time to deal with a licensing regime in terms of animals, and that regime and what we get involved with is set out in section 1.5. I won't run through them all, but effectively a licensing regime is there to protect businesses and the public and of course the animals themselves, and we are part of a national framework delivering regulation in terms of that regime. So we have officers, traditionally those officers were in our environmental health service. They're now moved across into the pollution team. Really it's just a balance of officer skills and having the right capability. So it's not really where they sit, but currently they sit within the pollution team, which is 4 officers who have a vast range of skill sets, and one of them now will be the regulation of the licensing regime. This regime was introduced by the government in 2018, and it was designed to reinforce animal welfare licensing and the activities of the regulating authority, ourselves, Portsmouth City Council, in engagement with businesses. Now, there are some really interesting ideas around that regime. It was a regime which took into account earned recognition. So it's always been, all regulation is necessary in my view, but in terms of how we enforce regulation, we are very interested in engaging with businesses in a very positive way and ensuring those businesses understand the regime, are educated in regards to the regime, and if they perform well, we therefore don't interfere with their business on such a regulatory basis. So this regime, for example, will allow a business who's performing well not to be inspected every year, which is a good thing, and they can, if the best performing businesses will only be inspected on a 3-year basis. So it's good for the business, it's good for us as a local authority, and of course, it's good in terms of our resources in other sort of regulatory functions. Earned recognition is set out within section 2.2 and 2.3. Unless there are any questions, I don't think there's very much more I want to say about animal welfare. Perhaps through you, Chair, I'll take questions in relation to each of the subjects I'm going to be talking about this afternoon as we go.
Right. We're all concerned about animal welfare. For example, I've had a conversation with the superintendent this morning about the horse racing that goes on down Eastern Road, and we've asked for them and our officers to strengthen up our approach towards that racing of horses and carts down Eastern Road, which I understand is an ad hoc arrangement. So we do have animal welfare issues to worry about a lot. Any questions, members? Emily?
Obviously, I'm a massive dog lover, but it's just looking at the licensing side of that. So what kind of criteria do they actually have to meet for it to be like once every 3 years? I'm hoping that you're going to say it's quite a high calibre that they have to be before you not to see them, to drop from not, because I'm a bit concerned where you don't see them for 3 years, the standards might drop. So that's just what I'm trying to, I can't really see it in the report, so unless I've missed it.
The one thing that I mentioned within the report, that a lot of businesses that look after animals, it is their business. They're passionate about animals and their welfare, of course, and it's their business to ensure with social media, etc. and so on, that their businesses is scored well in terms of that sort of traffic within the media. And quite clearly, if a business isn't performing very well, then it's probably through complaints to the local authority or through that chat online that business would be affected. The example I gave, that if they're registered with, I think the example I gave was with the Kennel Club, and that would be to a higher standard than the local authority licensing regime. In terms of our inspection, we would consider all the things that you would expect as a dog lover looking after your own dog, that we would ensure that business takes account of all those welfare issues for the dog. And that might be enrichment, it might be exercise, it might be food, it might be space, it might be company, it might be separation from dogs and bitches and all those sorts of things, space. So first thing we might do is go into the premises, and some of these might be domestic premises that require a license, and we ensure that they are suitable and they don't, the license is catered to fit the number of animals that they're looking after. So it's some very basic levels of, I say basic, it's basic if you're an animal lover and you want your dogs to, your dogs in this example to be looked after properly. We will react to complaints. So if you were to leave your dog with somebody and you felt that the dog, what you'd seen, or the dog had suffered as a result, in the same way as you could regarding any sort of regulation that we undertake as a local authority, you could contact us, express your concerns, and then we would react to those concerns, making contact with the business. So although the earned recognition is key, so we don't interfere, we will interfere and get involved if we receive any complaints about the business in the meantime.
Yinka.
It's still on the licensing part. So if the business do not meet the regulation requirements and they refuse a license, so do they have a chance to reapply again? Or once they are being refused, it's being refused, and they don't have any chance again?
The regime is based around education. So if we received an application for an X and we went along to the business and we did that first inspection, so that initial visit, and we found that it wasn't meeting the requirements, we wouldn't say no and you're barred. We would say no, you need to do whatever A, B, C, D to put those measures in place. We could revisit to ensure that they are in place, and then we could discuss giving you the license. There are other issues also around a person. Is that person a fit and proper person? So if we found evidence of someone being a conviction, for example, for cruelty for animals, we would consider whether that person is a fit and proper person to be looking after animals for others.
Okay, just one more question. And just to buttress what Councillor Emily just said. So do you do any spot check? You know, if you leave them for like 3 years, they know, oh, my inspection just taking place, and I'm not going to have any until the next 3 years. So do you do, at any point in time, maybe do spot check to make sure they comply?
The answer to that is no, but what we would do is we refer to any complaints that we received. I gave an example, it's slightly off subject, but in terms of food businesses, we have a similar inspection regime where there is earned recognition, and if you're a high-scoring premises, you've got a 5 score on your food hygiene rating scheme, you won't expect to see an officer for perhaps up to 3 years. However, in one quarter, the second quarter of this year, we received 198 complaints regarding food businesses. So, of course, we will get involved with those businesses, even though their scheduled visit might not be for several years' time. In terms of animal welfare, I've got to say that the businesses out there on the whole are excellent. They love what they are doing, and they will ensure that in many cases, the welfare of the animals is of greater importance to their own welfare. It is their passion. But if we get complaints, or indeed the standards aren't met, then we will take the necessary action.
Yeah, for me, I mean, a lot of this is intelligence-led too. So intelligence we fed in, and then the officers will go and do what you said, Yinka. And for instance, we saw up in Farlington an individual who was reported in the news quite recently in September, who was neglecting horses, and that person had previous convictions for breeding dogs. So that person was prosecuted and action taken against him. So we will do that when the evidence is there, as we do with all sorts of things, including the trial that's ongoing in the Crown Court at the moment with a rogue, with an individual. Yes, right, that's great. So no more questions on that one then, I think. And just a nod to our kennels, who do a really good job, and just got a platinum award for the work that they do up there. So where are we going on to now, Mr. Lee?
Pest control.
Pest control, indeed.
Pest control. We've delivered a pest control service from Portsmouth City Council for as long as I can remember, and I've been here, I think I'm in my 38th year, so we've had a high quality pest control service for a long time. There are some requirements for a local authority to look after its own land and its own premises in terms of pests, rodents particularly, not so much others in legislation. So that's where local authorities historically have had a pest control service. But nowadays, pest control services are often contracted out to other, perhaps, other businesses. They could be national businesses or local business through a procurement process. But I'm very, very pleased that we have retained our in-house pest control service. There's huge amounts of additional value for having an in-house service. Clearly, we can service our own housing stock, 15,000 or so Portsmouth City Council properties, huge amounts of land and historic buildings we look after in terms of pests and pest proofing and those sorts of things. It could be allotments, it could be the countryside areas in terms of insects and that sort of stuff. I must stress, absolutely, 100%, there are lots more regulations than there were when I joined regarding appropriate use of rodenticides and insecticides to ensure that we target only the species of the rodent or the insect that we want to eliminate, and we don't disrupt the biodiversity that we've already heard about this afternoon. It's a pay-as-you-use service, but there are huge benefits also because we can offer lower cost to those people who perhaps are unable to pay, could be on benefits, qualifying benefits and those sorts of things. So we have some flexibility in having an in-house service. It's extraordinarily, I think that's how I've described it, successful. The service is maintained by our pest control supervisor, or what I call him the field biologist, because it's a real skill in dealing with creepy crawlies and rodents. Mike Burford has been very successful in leading the team, and I think I headed up the narrative around our in-house pest control service is here to stay, hopefully.
Yes, there's another string to Portsmouth's bow. Unlike so many other local authorities, it's an in-house service, and we keep it sustainable, and we want, as you say, want it to stay. And so, for example, very challenging in the meetings I have with officers. So when we're talking about controlling rats, for example, who are another species, and useful in some places, not in many others. So when they put down the rodenticide, I double check always and push at those dead animals getting into the food chain, becoming carrion. And all the evidence I've heard is that they tend to go back to where they've come from, and they tend to die there, or they die in some other place inaccessible to animals. Any questions, members? Emily?
Well, I've made a joke in the briefing. I obviously had pest control out to my own house because my house lives literally behind Hillsey Lines, and they were great. They came out fantastic. My only little gripe, I guess, there's not an email address to email the team. So when I tried to call them initially, I was called 4 different times on hold for 25 minutes at a time, and it's a fantastic service, and I couldn't believe how cheap it was. But yeah, I don't know if that's something that could ever be implemented, if you just need to confirm or move the appointment, having an email address just to be able to contact, because sometimes people haven't got time to wait on the phone for hours of the day.
I think you go through the Reporter app, you'll find the link there. So is that right, Mr. Lee, or not?
There are, if you go online, there is a digital form that you can fill in and ask for a treatment, and they will provide you with a date, hopefully, if you're checking that, Emily. I'm hoping it's there. What we are doing is going through a digital transformation. Obviously, a lot more people are willing and able to book for treatments online, and we will be improving that service. But you should find a online page where you can open it, fill in the details, who you are, what your problem is, etc. and so on, and that will be assessed by someone from City Help Desk, and then they will make contact in relation to an appointment date. The dream is that you can do all of that online, as well as pick your own appointment date. What we do have, I think I say in the report, we have 3 officers, and we know exactly how many treatments they can do per day. And that might vary because treatment types take different amounts of time. So an initial treatment will take far longer than a revisit, because they would have done all the necessary survey work, etc. and so on, provided advice. Our advice is very comprehensive. For example, if we're putting down a rodenticide which is toxic, we will also give you information of the antidote to that rodenticide should a pet eat it, for example. So all of that explained in the initial visit. So having a digital system which will accommodate for all of those treatment types and treatment needs is quite complex, but we're working on trying to get that delivered. I will check.
I can't find it at the moment, so if Councillor Hunt, if you can direct it and send it. Yeah, at the minute all I can see is a number, so I can't see.
They'll get back to you. Thank you for raising that with us. If there's an issue, we'll get it sorted out. And I would say, I had an issue at Estella Road Flats. There was a terrible problem, and called everybody in. estates officers, the team and so on, all sorted now. No more complaints. I haven't had any complaints, touch wood, for 2 months. So I'm very, very pleased. As you said, Yinka.
Sorry, Richard. It's one more thing I would just like to maybe make inquiry. I know with PCC resident or housing, whatever, they are covered. What about the private? Because I've had a lot of private residents renting out from maybe private landlords complain about bed bugs and nothing was done about it. So are they covered under these services?
We offer a service to all in regards to the pest treatments that we deliver. There is always detail around what we can offer. Cockroaches, sorry, you mentioned bed bugs. Bed bugs are very difficult to deal with, and they require an awful lot of work. It's not a matter that an officer can turn up and spray some insecticide and the problem is eradicated. Those bed bugs are extremely robust. They've been around since the beginning of time, probably, and they're very difficult to eliminate. We still do offer services in terms of bed bugs, particularly for our council residents, because it requires more than, as I said, treatment. It requires an investigation.
Can I just interrupt you? They're listening in.
We
leave pigeons alone mostly.
We do leave pigeons alone. Yeah, proofing is the way to
You've obviously caught their ear.
Yeah. So bed bugs is a technical issue, and I provided papers, and I'm very happy to share them with you in the past, and I say recent past because they are difficult. In terms of general treatments, the common treatments that we offer, fleas, rodents, those sorts of things, we do offer them to all. As always, as I was trying to explain with our field biologist, and that analogy is that these creatures are difficult to deal with. If I was treating for mice within the property, I could continue to lay poison in a respectable way and eliminate the problem, but it would eradicate the problem of the mice which are resident. It won't stop other mice following those original mice. They effectively have a weak bladder and they lay a trail of urine, and another mouse will come along, pick up on that smell and follow that original mouse. So in terms of mice, yes, you can eliminate the creatures which are alive and current within a property, but the best way of resolving it full time is to proof that property to ensure those mice following the trail won't be able to gain access to that property. So proofing, filling in the gaps of a property is really, really key. So in terms of PCC housing, we engage with the housing officers. When we do our work, we say there's a hole in the wall or the air brick is broken or whatever it might be, and we ask the housing team with their contractors to fill those gaps. So we've resolved the immediate problem, but the ongoing problem in terms of proofing that property is also eliminated.
Sorry, I don't know. Do you cover like a slug? You know, we have some homes. Slug? Is it slug? Yeah, slugs.
Slugs. No, we don't. I mean, there's a lot of, going back to our countryside officers, you know, there's lots of creepy crawlies, critters that lots of people don't like within their homes. It could be spiders, it could be, you know, insects which have gained access to a home which people don't like. We don't treat for every insect that people don't like. We're going to be very careful about what we are doing. An obvious example is wasps and bees. Bees are really vital to the biosecurity of the world, effectively. We will go to extreme measures not to interfere with bees, but we will treat for wasps. But we're very, very careful. People might see a wasp and think it's a bee, or a bee think it's a wasp. We are really, really diligent in terms of how we deal with those insects.
All right, you can guess salt. Salt and beer. Very old-fashioned, but apparently it works. Or upturned half lemons, that sort of thing, you know, when you're making one of your lovely cakes. So, yeah. And bed bugs, they're a big problem. and they involve partnership working, particularly with social services and carers who go from one place to another to if there is an outbreak, and they're not nice things. All right, so now we're on to bathing water quality and trading standards prosecutions. Can you do them both in one go?
Okay, I'll certainly try.
Sink or swim?
Thank you. In terms of water quality, I think it's very important, first and foremost, to say that the quality of the water for Southsea East has not been formally classified for 2024, so that will run forward into 2025. But I've kind of put my neck on the line here by looking at the results for this season, which has now ended. It ended in October, and my prediction is that it will be poor. So that isn't a surprise. It was poor in 2024. It will be poor in 2025. The report builds on previous reports that I've taken to portfolio holders and to Cabinet in the past around what action are we as the local authority taking. It talks about the working group, it talks about the agents within that working group, and it talks about the good work that we have all done, particularly Southern Water and the Environment Agency, to look at where the problems may be. Now, whilst we have done an awful lot of work to locate those problems and introduce mitigation to repair them, our sampling and analysis has been ongoing. And I list sampling, and not only is just the bacteriological sampling, it's DNA sampling, it's looking at tidal flows, it's looking at leachate sampling, so any waters that may be travelling under the beach and contaminating the water at Southsea East. Now, all that evidence is suggesting that there is an improvement. The results for last year, if you looked at the Environment Agency website, and I checked this morning, it is up to date and current. All those results, if you looked at them in detail, suggested there is an improvement from 2023 to 2024, but we did have some high results at the end of the season, and those are the ones that are concerned. Anyone who sat and listened to me describe the classification process over the years will know this is a 4-year classification process. So even if we have a good year's or cleaner year's sampling results, we will still have the legacy of the poor results for the previous 3 years. The unfortunate thing is that this is developed over a 4-year period, and good year water quality is falling off that 4-year trend, so we're keeping the bad years on that classification. The good news within the report is that we are now redesigning our focus onto private water supplies. If the supply from a business or a home isn't linked into other people's sewers or the eventually the Southern Water sewers, but if it isn't shared with other people, it's a private supply, and that business is responsible for that network of their sewage system until it is joined in with others. Now, we're looking at businesses along the seafront. We're engaging with them. We've had some very positive responses. We will work with them, again, to try and survey some of those private supplies, talk about remediation and mitigation and what can be done. The improvement is there. If we can find any of the problems around Southsea East and repair them, next year the Environment Agency, and again I'm putting my using my crystal ball, the Environment Agency, if we had a really clear set of results for 2025, the Environment Agency say that we may be able to demonstrate that we found all the sources of potential contaminants, we've solved those sources of contaminants, and they may classify us as a result of 2025 results only. But we need an absolute clear set to do that. So we're going to work hard over the winter to look at those private supplies. A little element of fingers crossed for me that there aren't other problems that may materialise, but a clear set of results, the Environment Agency can assess whether we've done that step change and we can go from poor to good or excellent.
Indeed, and it's a proverbial we, I must point out. So this is the responsibility lies with the Environment Agency, and we as a council can put pressure on, and we continue to do that, and to talk to businesses as well in order to see what more we can do in order to improve the water. I think it's very important to make sure that people understand where the responsibility lies. Of course, we've also got an island that was once a bog, was boggy land, so we don't know quite where the leachates come out. So it is an issue, and there's optimism in the report, which I'm pleased about. Any questions, members?
No, I don't. It's not a question. I think it's just one of the things that a lot of people do find the most concerning is the quality of water around Portsmouth. I know it's not necessarily Southsea East, but going into even Langston Harbour, you know, sewage disposals are so high on people's agendas. But it is really good to know and reassuring that there is a lot of work going into it to try and sort of find us changing into a better, whatever the word is, classification.
Better environment.
Yeah,
that's it.
sorry, words
and
don't come
of
to me
course,
sometimes.
you know, the government's made legislation, previous government, and this one will continue on, to separate the sewage and the wastewater systems. That's important too going forward. But of course, we've got Victorian sewers, some of them broken, that we don't know about. But we have to keep putting pressure on Southern Water to make sure that they investigate those things properly to seek improvement. Trading standards, then, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Chair. This is really around criminality. I started off with criminality. There are criminals operating in our city, focusing and their activities around fraud and vulnerable individuals, ripping off people to with respect to building work. It's in the news every day, and it's an unfortunate thing. We have a highly dedicated small team of trading standards officers, and we are doing whatever we can with the resources we've got to tackle in a kind of risk-based approach. So we're tackling criminality where the detriment to victims has been large. It could be financial, it could be numbers of victims, and we are doing our very best to tackle those individuals. Of course, we as I've explained previously, in terms of any regulation, it is appropriate and proportionate, and we go through an awful lot of assessment to consider whom and why we will tackle criminals. But where criminality is rife and there is evidence to demonstrate that criminals need to be taken account, we will not shy from doing so. We have around 30 active cases going on. We do have cases that will ultimately end up in court, and it will be for court to decide on the basis of the evidence that we present whether there is criminality and what the punishment for that crime might be. Where we have received a conviction, or where the perpetrator has received a conviction, we will use our powers under the proceeds of crime to consider whether there's some financial assets that we can recover, not to recover our costs primarily, but to compensate the victims from the criminals' assets themselves. The focus on the report is that this is highly resource intensive when we take cases to court. Lots of cases, of course, the criminals will defend themselves and will end up in Crown Court, so in front of a jury. Those cases are battles to be won in the future. They take years potentially to get into Crown Court. Huge amounts of work goes into, all by these officers. There's no Crown Prosecution Service or anything like that. All the officers do the work in terms of witness statements, etc. and so on, all the way through. They present all the evidence themselves through a barrister, ultimately, if necessary. So here, it really is a narrative that we do those appropriate assessments. We do consider the risk in terms of taking action or not taking action. The risk of not taking action is that it may encourage others to do the same. It may send the wrong message to the victims of those offences. But in the risk of taking action means that it's expensive. Generally speaking, we don't have a budget, a slush fund within our own budget line to take a case. A case in Crown Court could cost up to £100,000. If we lose that case, we may have costs levied against the local authority. So the risks upon the staff and the authority are ginormous. The pressures are huge. But my message is we'll continue to take the action where it's appropriate, and that's the message at the end of that particular section around trading standards. We will do what we need to do to tackle these kinds of this kind of criminality.
Yeah, thanks to the investment that we're doing, we and the way we run this, the officers have all learned to do each other's jobs, and so we have a dedicated investigative team that we encourage to go after rogue traders and other people who break the law. And we will also encourage our officers to use the Proceeds of Crime Act, which they do, to go after assets of people to recover costs and assets that are being created through the proceeds of crime. So we do all of that as part of the City Council. And as I say, we will go out where the evidence is there. We will encourage our officers to go after these rogue traders to protect the people of Portsmouth. And we've been doing that for a long time now, and we'll continue to do that. Are you allowed to say that there is a case in the Crown Court right now that's soaking up a huge amount of resources, which we've agreed is a good thing to do?
I'm aware from my colleague that there's quite a bit on social media around that, but I would rather not make comment in this forum. Thank you.
Sure, fair enough. Thanks ever so much indeed. Members, any questions?
Sorry, I remember vividly our last meeting. I remember because that's last meeting you said there was a case in Crown Court. So, and I was even like, oh, I wanted to maybe come to just to see, but unfortunately I was out of the country. So is there any report on that case?
What I will say is we're in day 12 of that case, and that it's expected to go on until the 20th of December. That's the level of resource that is required to tackle or present cases in that sort of environment.
So I think this is 5 officers managing that case or helping to manage the case.
It's effectively the majority of the team that is required to ensure that they're the officers who have, in any case, let's talk about any case, in any case, they're the officers who compiled all the evidence over a period of time. And they have to then feed the court machine effectively, ensuring that witnesses are arranged, victims are arranged to give their witness statements, etc. and so on. Where there are lots of victims, we will try and assist the victims in terms of attendance, court, etc. and so on. So there's a huge amount of court management in terms of those officers. And whilst they're doing that, they don't have any spare time for business as usual activities.
So there's a big commitment from the City Council, but one that we're pleased to do. And of course it is sub judice, so we can't talk about the individual case, but we can go along as individuals at any time to sit in the back of the court and look at what's going on. I think that's just a freedom that we have. Any other questions, members? Very good. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee, and thank you for your 38 years of service to date. You've been there longer than me, which is saying something.
It's been a pleasure.
Been all right. So now we get on swiftly to another strong commitment from this administration, the council, which is Operation Nautical, which has been going on now, I think, for about 5 or 6 years, there or thereabouts, and proving to be highly beneficial, particularly in the summer's months. And you'll hear how we prepare for it. Over to you, Lauren.
Thank you. So the paper before you used to update you on the interventions in 2024 for Operation Nautical. Operation Nautical is the police name for the management of ASB on the seafront, which has been adopted by the partnership. The operation name covers from the Camber in Old Portsmouth all the way down to the Hayling Island jetty and everything in between. Partnership meetings typically start in April and run through to October. The antisocial behaviour and demand is very much seasonal. A range of partners attend meetings from statutory through to voluntary, commissioned and private sector. It's important to note that this is very much a partnership effort. with partners in attendance including the Harbour Master, our commission services such as Airbond, Motivate, Pompey in the Community and Portsmouth Mediation Service. We have Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police as well as the MOD Police, Marine Police, licensing and representatives from ASB. We also have multiple Portsmouth City Council departments who are involved, including Seafront Services, Community Wardens, Plain Youth and our events team. You will note that we've brought 2 previous reports to this portfolio briefing, one in October 2023 and one in March 2024. The differences that we've seen this year is previously we've had significant ASB in the Canberra, Old Portsmouth. This year that has been displaced predominantly up to South Parade Pier. This being said, there's been a 38% in reduction of reporting from reports to community wardens from 2019, with a 2% reduction from last year. For the police, reports around social behaviour have reduced 57% from 2019 and 55% from last year. The main issues this year was in May, we had large-scale disorder around South Parade Pier. Key partners in a core group met every week for about, I want to say 8 weeks, to progress actions and prevent escalation. That meant a reflection on the previous weekend and planning for the weekend ahead. 3.32 of the report to 3.36 highlights all the work that was done. As an outcome, the Southern Co-op are reporting all shoplifting as well as locking away alcohol at key times, and that's the co-op which is directly opposite South Parade Pier. Those cabinets are a permanent fixture and not being removed, and they will be used as and when needed during peak times. There has been some target hardening around the Hayling Island jetty, making it more difficult for swimming and jumping off the jetty. 3 persons under the age of 18 were issued with CBOs, criminal behaviour orders. A person was arrested and remains in custody for their involvement in the disorder. Police completed at least 73 patrols of the seafront during the period, albeit that is definitely underreported, and the police did a lot more than those 73 patrols. Partners, including the community wardens, completed 210 during the same period. The police issued 3 Section 35 dispersal orders. They made use of drones, and Portsmouth Mediation Service created the Waterfront Restorative Approach Partnership, also known as WRAP, which brought youth providers together to offer youth diversion with a weekly partnership programme of events, meaning there is an offer for youth diversion every day. It was a coordinated response of the youth providers to ensure that there was no overlap and an option for everyone. In terms of the next steps, we held a learning event last week to discuss what went well from the partners' point of view and how we can improve for next year. The key changes next year, which Rob will be leading on. So we will start planning earlier. We start planning in April. It's too late in April. We need to start in February. So those partnership meetings will start from then. We'll be looking to have joint patrols between the community wardens and the local beat bobbies, so our local neighbourhood policing teams, to help build our intelligence picture, as well as engaging with the community. We'll be looking to have the detached youth outreach programme set up in time for the April school holidays. The teams in services will be looking to seek additional funding early on. This year the funding was really late. I want to say it was June, which was too late. So they'll be looking to get that early on. And we'll be looking at proactive shared comms from all partners to ensure that our social media and our communication are all aligned, and it isn't just down to one partner who's updating the wider community about what's happening. There's lots of other steps, but that's just a small flavour based on our learning. Any questions?
So I'd just like to, at the end of the season, as it were, we haven't stopped doing our work, but to see ASB reported down 38% over 5 years, and to see the police saying it's 50% down has to be a good news story. And of course, people don't always feel that, because some things don't get reported. Of course, people feel they won't get through and so on. But the trend does, as a result of all the good partnership work in doing. I have to stress the remarkably good relationship we have with the police here and the MOD and our outreach services and indeed to the trading standards. All these things come together, so we do it in a joined up way, in a non-siloed way, but doing a joined up way to try and suppress criminality and antisocial behaviour, and we will continue to do that. And indeed engaging with businesses. You heard the example of the alcohol that had been stolen out the co-op, which fuelled, for want of a better word, fuelled some of the outrageous behaviour that we have seen. So we've learnt from that. And the other great thing is, well, we've got a team of officers and councillors who continue to learn from things that don't go quite right. And each year we look forward to change things. We try to go forward and change things to improve what we're doing all of the time. Again, thank you both. If you all take back to your teams, the thanks of the council for all the good work that they do, and it is really good work. Members, any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's not really a question, it's just, again, a thanks from us. I think it's really good to have seen from a previous report last year the numbers that are decreasing and the things that you're implementing, which are having a knock-on effect. I think we all saw, you know, the kind of what happened around the co-op, and we're quite shocked at that. And it was really sad, you know, to hear for some residents that felt you know, sort of insecure and everything sort of being around those areas sometimes, which we, you know, we don't want anyone to feel. But from this report, I think it's just really good that the steps you're taking are making a difference, and you are being really proactive, you know, from having drones and things and improved CCTV. I think it is just really positive. So fingers crossed it goes down even lower next year.
Indeed, the CCTV, the police praise our CCTV. Some places have reducing it. I think Southampton are reducing it. Other places have got rid of it altogether because they can't afford it. But we're not going to do that here. We're going to continue to keep it and improve it all of the time. And the city Wi-Fi, although it can be a bit of a nuisance, is going to bring us better and more accurate pictures in due course, so that creates better evidence. But I was in a meeting with the commander for, sounds great as commander, but Superintendent Markham this morning, and he has nothing but praise for the way we work with the police and how often that the police use our CCTV. How many times has it said that they downloaded it? Was it?
I think it was just over 500 copies last quarter.
Yes. And when I was in the CCTV control room last week, I was asking the guys during the night time how many incidents that they'd looked at. I think it was 19,500 recorded incidents since it got going. So it's a very effective system and helps protect everybody across the city. And the police are very pleased to have it in their armoury, as are we, of course. So thanks to the CCTV control. It's still Mr. Anthony Hadley, isn't it? Yeah. So if you'd like to thank them as well. Emily or Yinka, would you like to ask any questions, anything that's there? No. Yeah. I think we should also add in, particularly for Yinka, the amount of work that goes on with the estates officers and how they patrol the estates and they use their own CCTV. This all adds to the suppression of crime and the deterrence and the detection of crime in our city. So all these people working together is just so important. And if anything comes out the meeting, you can see how through these reports how everything links up together, and that's the success of this city, I think. Okay, members, anything else you'd like to ask members? Claire, anything you want to add, ladies? Or? Oh, yes, of course. Which one is it? Right at the end.
It's the Hilsey loader, it's Kelly Nash.
Yeah, go ahead, Kelly. I beg your pardon. I thought we'd got there. Sorry.
It's all right. I can romp through this very quickly.
I thought you were just very keen.
Development opportunity. No,
yeah, you go ahead.
I'll romp through this really quickly. So we brought the report forward, just an information to update on the work being done to undertake the refurbishment of Hillsey Lido. It's well underway, as probably people know. It's one of 3 capital schemes in the city that was supported by the Levelling Up Fund Round 1, one of which was the Port Terminal extension, the other was the King George V football complex, which is now up and running. In fact, both of them are up and running. The Port Terminal's well underway. In terms of the Lido construction, it is a complex construction, as you would expect of such a site, and we are operating in a really tight budgetary envelope, so that's not without its challenges. But I would say that we have been, number one, lucky with the weather so far, touching all the wood that is available to me. Our on-site contractors have been really, really strong partners for us and working really well there. We're now currently in the market looking for an operator to take the site on when it is ready for opening to the public and make sure that we're delivering that best possible experience to our residents. I think probably most people here are signed up to the bulletin that goes out on a fortnightly basis giving the updates, and I think that's a really good source of information. So if people are interested in the scheme, I would absolutely urge signing up to that. I think in summary, broadly, as I say, we're doing reasonably well with the construction. We're on track to finish most of that by late spring of 25 to enable a limited summer season to open in 2025, which will coincide with the 90th anniversary of events. But what we would like to see at the site for future is actually an active winter programme as well, and we would be looking for our operator to be developing that for us. So really happy to take any questions that people might have.
Well, I hope there's some questions on this. Emily, it's your ward.
It is my ward, but I do get updates. Yeah. So the only thing that I was slightly more concerned from the briefing, actually, you were away. It was, I can't remember the gentleman, and he mentioned Blue Lagoon and a Beefeater taking it over. And obviously that's, you can imagine what us councillors were like. So I just need reassurance, kind of what's going on with that side. And kind of what happens if we don't find someone?
Yeah, okay, so 2 really good questions. The first one is probably about what the market engagement looks like. So what we've done is, and I think there's a link on the report that enables everyone to see what has gone out to the market, but basically what's gone out is a brochure that says, obviously, we're looking for an operator for the main pool site and for the Blue Lagoon as part of that, and kind of with the Blue Lagoon expected to be the provision of food, beverage offer across the site, because as we all know probably from the previous things we've looked at in the committee, it's quite difficult to make a standalone sports facility work if you don't have somewhere that people can get their coffees, their ice cream, their cakes, sandwiches, all of those things. So that's the expectation. Now, it may well be that someone who comes forward may bring a proposal that says, well, we'd like to run it this way through a franchise operator. It may be that we get lots of people come forward with independent proposals. It may be that people come forward and they have proposals that look at that site really differently and they think they're going to deal with the food and beverage stuff separately. So I think probably what David would have been describing is a range of possibilities that we may get back from the market. Just because we get them back from the market doesn't mean that we would go with any of them particularly. What we will do when we get those responses back is assess what they look like in terms of the fit for the site, for the community, and for what our aspirations are, which, as you'd have seen in that brochure, are very much to see further investment coming forward from there to deliver it as the kind of facility that we'd want to see. So I think he was absolutely right to say there could be a range of possibilities back. I don't know what those are yet because we've got an agent dealing with those. When they come back, we would look to deal with them. But I think there is a broad understanding that there is something about the particular nature of the site and how we would expect to see that working. So I think that's the first thing to say. We don't know yet, but I think it's fair to say there could be those options. They also might not pop up. We don't know, and we won't know till we get to the end of the process. And even if they do, that doesn't necessarily follow that that's what would be there. The second question was,
what if you don't get any uptakes? Because it's a lot of money.
Yeah, what if we don't get anything? I think then we'd have to look at what a potential plan B for operation would be, and that could include operating in-house if we needed to, and kind of looking at a model whereby we would draw on our existing leisure providers in the city to support us in that process, where we maybe go back and build on whatever intelligence we got from the market to see how we would need to adjust the proposition. But I think at this stage we're relatively confident that we will deliver on something. So we're not looking in a hugely developed plan B at the moment, but we do have those thoughts that if it's not possible to get into an arrangement with someone to do that, we would obviously need to look at something to make that happen, because you're absolutely right. It is a lot of investment. It's absolutely imperative we get that up and running and that we get people being able to feel the benefit of that. And there are ways that we would do that, but our preferred option is to find that highly expert operator that's in the market who will bring their expertise to bear here.
So it was a surprise when we got the money. I'm very grateful to Penny Mordaunt, of course, for making that happen. But co-location of things, so you've got the wakeboarding there, you've got the splash pool, and now the difference between before and now is there's also a team of professional officers at the council who are involved with it. When there was the Hillsea Lido Pool for the People's Trust, that element was not there, and so it kind of stumbled along it would, and this does happen, but I'm sure now, but with that professional approach and the discipline brought by the City Council, will avoid the concern that you have, and we shall always be keeping keeping an eye on it. And I think it's trying to get more things in there, so seeing the winter use, coming along, this sort of people go there and see it as a destination, and building on what's there, the pump track, which the previous councillors got put in there, the wakeboarding, and making it more of a destination. And it won't be what it was, but it's to be built on. And let's hope that what let's hope that what we're doing now triggers more activity in that particular neck of the woods. Because one thing I always say is we see the city as a whole. There is no division, so far as we are concerned, between north and south, although we get chided for it sometimes. We look at the investment in KG5, we look at what's gone on here and supporting Hillsea Lido, the pump track, wakeboarding, all the investment gone into the football fields and Drayton Farlington. So, it's a great thing for the whole of the city, not least the north. Any more questions, members? Any officers, anything else they would like to add? Thanks, Kelly. So I can close the meeting then, Jane. Thank you all very much for coming. I hope everybody's had an enjoyable meeting.